Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something pretty weighty, the Indus Waters Treaty, the IWT.
Yeah, that's the agreement between India and Pakistan, right, from
Yeah.
1960, about the rivers.
Exactly. The World Bank helped get it across the line. It basically carved up the shared water resources.
And it's really crucial to understand. It's shaped how they manage this vital resource for decades. And things are, well, changing now.
They really are. So our mission here is to unpack the IWT for you. We want to get into the nitty-gritty, the history, what it actually says, the impact, and yeah, what's been happening recently.
Trying to get that clarity without needing a law degree.
That's the goal. So fundamentally, it drew a line, didn't it? Divided the six main rivers.
It did, geographically. India got control over the eastern rivers. That's the Beas, Ravi, and Sutlej. Think of those as, largely India's to use.
Okay, and Pakistan.
Pakistan was allocated the western rivers,
Yeah.
the big one, the Indus, plus the Chenab and the Jhelum.
And the amount of water involved is just staggering. The eastern ones are around, what, 41 billion cubic meters a year?
Roughly, yeah, which is a lot of water.
But the western rivers.
Even bigger, about 99 billion cubic meters on average annually.
So percentage-wise, it broke down like India got 30%.
Around 30%, yeah. And Pakistan, the remaining 70%. A very substantial share for Pakistan.
And the really surprising thing, maybe, is that despite all the friction between India and Pakistan, this treaty is often called one of the most successful water-sharing deals anywhere.
It is quite remarkable. Its resilience, lasting through wars, constant tension. Why? Partly, well, massive economic dependence on both sides.
Right.
And partly the way it was designed, the mechanisms within it.
Okay, let's dive into those provisions then. How did that success get built in? We know the East-West split, but it wasn't just like handing over title deeds, was it?
No, not quite. It primarily partitioned the rivers. The idea was exclusive use for each country, mostly. Not really continuous sharing in the way we might think of it.
Ah, okay. So India got the eastern rivers, Pakistan got the western, with some allowances.
Exactly. Allowances for some existing uses at the time, but fundamentally partitioned. India could use the eastern waters.
Yeah.
Pakistan got the western. Though India had some specific permitted uses on those too.
And there was a buffer period.
Yeah.
A transition.
Yes, a crucial 10-year transition period. India actually had to keep supplying water to some Pakistani canals from the eastern rivers during that time.
Really?
Yeah, gave Pakistan time to build the infrastructure to use the western rivers instead. And incredibly, this continued even during the 1965 war.
Wow. That says a lot about the intent behind it.
It really does.
And India also chipped in financially to help Pakistan with that infrastructure, didn't they?
They did, a one-off payment.
Yeah.
62.06 million UK pounds sterling.
That's a serious amount of money back then.
Absolutely. Specifically to help fund Pakistan's new canal system. And again, paid in installments over 10 years, even through the conflict.
So beyond the initial setup, the treaty created an ongoing way for them to talk, right? This permanent Indus Commission.
Essential. Absolutely vital. Each country appoints a commissioner.
And they have to meet regularly.
At least once a year, often more. They consult on anything treaty-related, try to head off disagreements, resolve disputes.
What kind of things do they do?
Joint inspections of dams and canals, exchanging data on river flows, visits to project sites, notifying each other about planned works. It's the main day-to-day channel.
The first line of defense for water issues, basically.
You could say that. Though, interestingly, their annual reports aren't public, not even from Pakistan, which often raises concerns about India's actions.
But the notification part about planned projects, that still happens.
Oh, yes. That's critical for transparency. And the data exchange continues, even when things are tense politically.
And if the commission hits a wall, if they can't agree.
Then there are formal dispute resolution options. For technical disagreements, a neutral expert can be brought in.
Okay.
For bigger disputes about interpreting the treaty itself, it can go to a court of arbitration with international experts.
And those have actually been used.
Yes, we've seen both. Like with the Baglahar and Kishanga hydro projects, those disputes went through these processes.
But it doesn't always resolve things neatly. The Rattle project seems like a current sticking point.
It absolutely is. Pakistan has major objections to the Rattle hydro plant on the Chenab. They say the design violates the treaty.
And they want a court of arbitration.
Yes. India, though, prefers a neutral expert, seeing it as more of a technical issue. That difference in approach really highlights the ongoing challenges in applying the treaty today.
It's not just Pakistan raising flags, though. India has potential issues, too.
That's true. India has concerns about, for instance, Pakistan's groundwater use near the Ravi and Sutlej rivers, potentially impacting surface flows.
Things India is entitled to under the treaty.
Exactly. And also concerns about some river works Pakistan did, which India feels might worsen flooding in the Kutch region. But India hasn't pushed these through formal dispute channels quite as hard.
Now, you mentioned something fascinating earlier, that Pakistan, using the Court of Arbitration so much, could actually, weirdly, lead to the treaty falling apart. How?
Well, the thinking is, the more the Court of Arbitration makes these really detailed rulings interpreting very specific clauses.
Which often happens because Pakistan brings cases.
Right. The more that happens, the more you risk setting precedents that fundamentally change how the treaty has always been understood and applied.
Ah, so a ruling could reinterpret a core part of the deal?
Potentially. And that new interpretation could then give either side grounds to say, look, the deal we signed up for isn't the deal we have anymore, and maybe even consider walking away. It's a complex dynamic.
Okay, let's step back. How did this whole situation even come about? The history. Where do these rivers start?
Mostly in the Himalayas, Tibetan Plateau, and then through Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir in India.
Mountain.
Then they flow down through Punjab and Sindh in Pakistan, out to the Arabian Sea.
And they water this enormous agricultural area, especially in Pakistan.
Huge. One of the biggest irrigated zones in the world, fed by a single river system. By 2009, over 47 million acres. It's the backbone of their agriculture.
So 1947, partition happens. British India is divided, but based on religion, not river basins.
And that's the crux of the problem. Suddenly, the upstream sources are mostly in India.
And Pakistan is downstream.
Exactly. Utterly dependent on flows coming from India for this massive irrigation network, a very vulnerable position. They saw India's control of the headwaters as a major threat.
Was there anything right after partition, a temporary fix?
Yeah, the Inter-Dominion Accord in 1948. Basically, India agreed to keep releasing water to Pakistan's canals temporarily.
In exchange for...
Payments. Pakistan had to pay annually. But everyone knew it wasn't sustainable. Just buying time for a permanent solution.
But finding that permanent solution wasn't easy. Early talks stalled.
Completely deadlocked. Neither side wanted to budge. India felt it had the upper hand controlling the sources. Pakistan felt vulnerable.
Did Pakistan try to involve international bodies?
They proposed going to the International Court of Justice. But India said no. This had to be sorted out between them bilaterally. So, stalemate.
Enter the World Bank. How did they get involved? Seems a bit unusual.
It started with David Lilienthal, former head of the U.S. Tennessee Valley Authority. He visited in '51.
Okay.
Saw the tension, especially over Kashmir. His idea was maybe focus on something less political where they could cooperate, like the Indus Basin development.
Use water cooperation to lower the temperature overall?
That was the hope. Maybe even help with Kashmir down the line. He suggested the World Bank could facilitate it.
And the bank's president, Eugene Black, liked the idea.
He did. He saw the water dispute as a major roadblock to development for both countries. Critically, the bank drew a line. They'd help with the functional stuff, the engineering, the technical water management.
Let's stay out of the politics.
Exactly. Not be an arbitrator on politics, just a facilitator on the practical water issues.
So the first step was get the engineers talking.
Pretty much. They formed a working party, engineers from India, Pakistan, the World Bank. There was some optimism initially. Engineers speak the same language, right? Technical standards, problem solving.
Maybe they could find common ground.
That was the idea. Build some trust.
But the core disagreement just wouldn't go away, the who gets what water question.
Exactly. Pakistan stuck to its historical rights. We've always used this water. India proposed a new split, east for India, west for Pakistan. Two totally different views. It overshadowed the technical talks.
So the World Bank eventually had to push its own plan in 1954.
They did. They basically proposed the east-west split. Bees, Ravi, Sutlej to India, Indus, Chenab, Jhelum to Pakistan.
The core of the final treaty.
Yes. And crucially, their plan included building canals and storage in Pakistan to replace the eastern river water they'd lose access to. It was a comprehensive package deal.
India agreed, but Pakistan pushed back.
Initially, yes. Pakistan felt it ignored their historical use patterns, feared losing the eastern waters would devastate parts of West Punjab. They thought it favored India unfairly. They even threatened to walk out.
But they came back. Why?
Ultimately, neither side could really afford for the talks to collapse completely. Pakistan didn't want a water conflict, and a total breakdown left them exposed. India wanted the dispute resolved to move on with its own plans.
So the 1954 proposal became the basis, even if it took another 6 years of haggling.
Exactly. Lots of back and forth, compromises, arguments.
Yeah.
But that 54 plan was the anchor.
And the final big piece was the money, funding Pakistan's new infrastructure.
Huge issue. The bank first suggested India pay, but India refused.
Understandably.
So the solution was the Indus Basin Development Fund Agreement. A group of countries, Australia, Canada, West Germany, New Zealand, UK, US, plus the World Bank itself, chipped in with grants and loans for Pakistan.
International buy-in.
That's what unlocked it. Led to
Yeah.
the signing in Karachi, September 1960.
And Nehru's famous quote afterwards that India had purchased a water settlement really captures the compromise involved.
It does. Both sides gave ground.
So, let's get practical. What did this treaty actually allow each country to do with the water beyond just the broad allocation, especially on those western rivers Pakistan got?
Right. For the Indus, Chenab, Jhelum, India's uses are restricted. Some limited irrigation is allowed in the upper areas, but with caps.
But non-consumptive uses, like hydropower.
Unlimited non-consumptive use. Hydropower generation, navigation, flood control, fishing, that's all fine in principle. But, and this is key, the treaty limits how much new water storage capacity India can build on these western rivers.
To protect downstream flows to Pakistan.
Precisely. Both general storage and specific hydropower storage are limited.
And that limitation has been a sore point, particularly in Jammu and Kashmir.
Definitely. There's a long-standing argument in J&K that the treaty didn't give them enough water allocation from those western rivers for their own irrigation needs. They feel their development potential was curbed.
Even though Pakistan got enough water for its vast irrigated areas.
The perception in J&K is that their local needs weren't prioritized in the final deal.
But India can build certain types of hydro projects more freely, these run-of-river ones.
Yes, ROAR projects are generally permitted. They use the river's natural flow, minimal storage.
So they don't hold back large volumes of water?
Right. The treaty restricts the operating pool, the water held for immediate generation, especially during low-flow periods. But surcharge storage, temporary extra storage during high flows like monsoons, isn't limited.
Allowing more power generation when water is abundant.
Exactly.
Now, here's a counterintuitive idea. Could Pakistan actually benefit if India did have a bit more storage upstream in J&K?
Some experts argue that yes. The logic is, if India could store some water during high flows,
They could release it during the dry, lean season?
potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Augmenting flows for Pakistan when they need it most. It might help their irrigation, maybe even reduce their need for massive, potentially risky dams downstream. It's a complex trade-off discussion.
Speaking of Pakistan's dams, they have some huge projects planned, right?
Very ambitious ones. Basha, the controversial Kalaba Dam, others, aiming for more irrigation, power, flood control.
But there are risks, seismic zones.
Many are in seismically active areas, yes. That raises serious questions about safety, potential downstream impact if a dam fails not just for Pakistan, but maybe even for Kutch in India.
And another surprising angle, the idea that IWT gives India a kind of military advantage. How does that work?
The argument is subtle, because the treaty defines legitimate water uses. If Pakistan were to deliberately destroy major Indian water infrastructure,
That would be a clear violation of the treaty itself.
a major one, it could give India grounds to say the treaty is void or take other strong actions. So the treaty's rules might actually deter Pakistan from attacking Indian water infrastructure as a military tactic.
Huh. Never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift to more recent times. The treaty coming under fire. Pakistan's concerns about Indian dams.
They've consistently objected to projects on the Chenab Baglahar, Salal, now Rattle. The fear is always the same. India could use them to control flows.
Either hold back water, causing shortages, or release too much, causing floods.
Exactly. And remember that 2019 statement by India's Minister Gadkari about potentially diverting water, that set off major alarm bells in Pakistan.
And then there's the Kutch issue, this left bank outfall drain, the LBOD.
A big environmental and diplomatic headache. Pakistan built this huge drain to carry salty, polluted farm runoff from Sindh.
And dumps it near the Rann of Kutch in
Yes.
India.
Essentially, yes. Without, India argues, proper consultation or consent under the treaty's spirit, it causes flooding, contaminates water sources India uses for salt farming, and more,
And it's near the disputed Sir Creek area.
which just adds another layer of complexity.
Things really seemed to heat up after the 2016 Uri attack. Talk of India revoking the treaty.
There was definitely loud talk about it in India then. Revoke it, suspend it, use water as leverage. India also decided to restart the Tolbul project on the Jhelum, which Pakistan had long objected to.
How did Pakistan react?
With serious concern. Analysts warned any unilateral change by India would be devastating for their agriculture and economy.
But India eventually stepped back from the brink.
The official line became that India would follow the treaty in letter and spirit. Still, the damage to trust was done.
And the regular commission meetings became less regular after that, and especially after Pulwama in 2019?
That seems to be the case. Fewer high-level meetings of the Permanent Indus Commission. It suggests a strain on that cooperative framework, less proactive engagement at the top.
Meanwhile, India started talking more about complete utilization of its water share.
Yes, focusing on using every drop it's entitled to under the treaty, especially from the eastern rivers.
Because some water from the Ravi and Sutlej was still flowing to Pakistan unused by India.
At times, yes. So India's looking at ways to capture and use that, maybe cooperate with Pakistan to send some to Kutch, maybe even divert Chenab water over to the eastern rivers via tunnels, though that's highly controversial.
And concrete projects are moving forward.
Definitely. Shaprkani Dam on the Ravi that just got finished in 2024. Big step for using Ravi water.
Right.
Plus others like Makarapatan Barrage, Usha Dam are in the pipeline, all about using that full eastern river share. And smaller hydro projects are also being certified as treaty compliant and notified to Pakistan.
Okay, which leads us to the really recent stuff, the push for renegotiation. We know J&K's assembly has called for revising or ditching the treaty before.
Multiple times, yeah, 2003, 2016, saying it restricts their development. There's even a case challenging it in India's Supreme Court.
That feeling that J&K got shortchanged in the original deal.
That's the core grievance fueling those calls.
Then, 2023, India sends a formal notice to Pakistan, wants to renegotiate the whole treaty.
A major step. India cited Pakistan's objections to projects, as being against the treaty's spirit.
And Pakistan's response.
Cautious. They basically said, let's stick to the existing dispute resolution mechanisms within the treaty. They seemed wary of opening up the whole agreement for renegotiation.
Understandable, maybe, from the downstream perspective?
Likely, yes. More risk for them, perhaps.
But the existing dispute processes kept grinding on. The Court of Arbitration, the neutral expert.
Yes, dealing with Kishanga and Rattle. Both the court and the expert basically said, yes, we have the authority to rule on these issues. The neutral expert's final decision is expected, end of 2026?
Right, and even with all this happening, J&K started planning another project, Kishanga II, in early 2025.
Shows their continued push on hydro development, yes.
Then September 2024, India formally asks for a treaty review. Pakistan repeats its line, stick to the current deal. And then early 2025.
March 1st, 2025. After some delays, India stopped the flow of Ravi water into Pakistan from the newly completed Shaprkandi Barrage.
Putting that full utilization policy into action.
A very concrete step, yes, making use of its Ravi share.
And that brings us right up to the present, and the most dramatic move yet, suspension.
Tragically, yes. April 23rd, 2025. After the horrific terrorist attack in Pahalgam, the Indian government announced it was suspending the Indus Waters Treaty with Pakistan.
Citing national security.
That was the stated reason. A truly unprecedented step in the treaty's 65-year history. The full implications are still, unfolding.
So, wrapping this up, the IWT, born in 1960, a landmark deal, divided the rivers, aimed for cooperation.
Seen as a success for a long time, despite everything.
But always under pressure. Disputes over dams, evolving needs, political tensions.
Absolutely. We've seen the J&K grievances, India's push for full utilization, the formal request to renegotiate.
And now, suspension. A complete game changer.
It really is. It shows how even long-standing agreements can buckle under geopolitical stress and security crises. It throws the future of water management in the region into serious question.
Yeah. And that leaves us with a heavy final thought for you. Think about that incredibly fragile balance, international cooperation, national needs, security concerns, and this fundamental resource, water, in such a volatile part of the world.
What happens now, after suspension?
Yeah.
What are the long-term ripple effects?
And could there ever be another way, a different framework to share water peacefully and fairly in the future?
Huge questions. No easy answers.
Definitely not. We hope this deep dive, though, has given you a clearer picture of the journey this vital treaty has taken and the critical point it's reached today.